Alright, so today I'm giving my 2 cents on something that's become kind of notorious. And I understand entirely why, and we'll talk about that as the video goes on. Today we're talking about the Crunchyroll original, Crunchyroll being an anime distributor primarily, but also like a studio. Like they're the Netflix of anime, basically. But the Crunchyroll original anime, quote-unquote anime, High Guardian Spice. And I guess I'll just say it now. People were really upset with this show, primarily because it was targeted at anime fans. And it's not an anime. It's just not. Like, sorry to the show. You're not an anime, man. You gotta get over it. But the question is this show good? I've seen really mixed reviews on it. Reviews I haven't spent a lot of time watching, obviously, because I didn't want to get too spoiled on the show. But I turned on a couple of review videos, other reviewers' videos, to try to get some first impressions of this show from people who had already experienced it. Because I was asked to talk about it. Because, what was the exact way they put it? The person who requested that I talk about this said, but I didn't think it was that bad, or something along those lines. And like, man, if that's the most glowing review this show can get out of somebody, like, I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried to watch this one. But, at least based on what I've seen of it, because again, I didn't watch the whole show. I just watched a couple episodes. It's not actually that bad. It isn't great, and I definitely feel like it has a lot of problems, but it's not that bad. And it's kind of a bummer, I looked it up, it's kind of a bummer that apparently there's absolutely no word at all on whether or not it's getting a second season. Because when this show does things right, it's pretty enjoyable. And I would have liked to have seen them hammer out some of its problems and give it another go in a second season. It's kind of like how I felt about the recent live-action Cowboy Bebop. It wasn't great, in fact it was worse than this. By a pretty wide margin, I think. What I watched of it anyway. But there were moments in it that were really good. I would have liked to have seen the crew working on that show get a second season to give it another go and try to do better. Because it did have a lot of potential. And I feel like this show did too. But it looks like it might be canceled, and that does kind of suck a little bit. For those who don't know what this show is, though, it's basically Harry Potter, RWBY, Steven Universe. And, yeah, I don't think I need to elaborate on that. That's basically it. That's basically the whole show. Right there. Every concept in this show has been done, and I would argue, even though I didn't hate the show, it's been done better. Like, the main characters, for example, which, from what I can tell, is gonna congeal into a four-woman group, just like in RWBY, all have themed names, but rather than colors, they're spices. Which is fine, that's a nice little hook to get people interested in the characters, immediately give them a naming scheme. But in RWBY, the literally colorful names were, like, thematically relevant. They had something to do with this world and the state that it's in, and facilitated our first little bit of understanding about how this society had come together after the mysterious disaster in the show's history that is one of the main hooks. It doesn't seem like there's anything like that here, though. It's just kind of a coincidence that these characters have spice-themed names. And while the environments in this, I think, are really well designed and look really nice, they're just kind of... I don't want to use the word generic because that sounds mean, but they're just kind of generic medieval/fantasy style environments. There's nothing that really hooks you. There's no wonky architecture or floating candles or talking portraits or anything like that. Nothing to give this world its own unique flavor above and beyond what we've seen 100 times before. It has personality, but there's nothing unique about that personality, if that makes sense. It's good, but it's not interesting. The school looks just kind of like a generic school. Like, I could imagine this being Professor X's School for Gifted Youngsters, just as much as a fantasy school. And the backstory of our main character, Rosemary, or Rose, is literally that her mom with pink hair disappeared. And that kind of feels Steven Universe-y, just like the animation style and the character designs in this feel kind of Steven Universe-y. But she was also A person in the same profession, the same warrior profession that Rosemary herself now wants to go into, who disappeared and may have died in the line of that profession, just like Ruby's mom in RWBY. Except that unlike in RWBY, where the characters all have their own unique character designs with their own unique weapons, Rosemary's mom just has knight's armor and a sword. And it's a pretty sword, and it's pretty knight's armor, but there's nothing particularly hooking about it. There's nothing about it that gets me more interested in this character just at a glance. I see that scene. There's a scene in the first episode where Rosemary has a dream. It's obviously a very fictionalized version of what happened, but it's a dream about what happened to her mom. And I'm like, oh, hey, it's that thing that happens all the time in different stuff. Not, oh, hey, I wonder what happened to her. I wonder if she'll show up later. And that's not saying they can't tell this story well. It's not saying they can't do this well enough in their own show to make it worthwhile in the end. It's just, to stick a landing, you have to take off first. And it doesn't really feel like they did. But then there are things about this show that I like. And that's not even to mention, like, some of the dialogue in this is really good. In fact, some of it's pretty funny. The relationship between Rosemary and her friend Sage, for example, I think is genuinely kind of cute, and some of their dialogue feels extremely effortlessly realistic. Like two friends who have known each other forever. And there are some great scenes between them. Like after Rosemary has that aforementioned dream about her mom, Sage just automatically moves over in her bed so that Rose can sleep the rest of the night with her for comfort. And there's actually a really good scene where the two of them are riding away from their hometown on their way to the magic school, and they look back at their town and see how small it is and realize it's always been that small. They just didn't realize it until they had this new perspective. That's really good stuff. And there's representation here, which you guys know I really like. But then so much of the dialogue in this also feels like exposition. Like there's a way to write exposition into dialogue so that it doesn't feel like it's just there for the audience. But so much of the dialogue in this feels like that. Like the very opening dialogue of the show, where we are told that going off to this school is what Rosemary has wanted her entire life. We're just flat out told that by the characters, when the only two characters talking to each other are Rosemary and Sage, two people who already know this thing. And all you had to do, literally all you had to do, because they're literally getting ready to leave for the school, is have one of them start to get nervous about it, just long enough for the other character to say, this is what we wanted our whole lives, to get them psyched up for it again. That's the only change you would have had to make, and it would have been perfectly fine. But instead it feels clunky, and it's the first thing the characters say to each other, and it takes you right out of the show. Then there's the fact that this was, as I mentioned, marketed as an anime, and it just doesn't look like one. This looks like a show that should be off having its budget strangled by Cartoon Network or something. It doesn't look bad at all. I want to be clear about that, but it looks like Steven Universe. Like the animation of it, the way the characters move, looks like Steven Universe. Like they're like walk cycles and stuff that they just feel a little too simple and robotic. Like this was a show made on a shoestring budget. And that's fine if that's the kind of show that you're able to put together, but I can't imagine that that's all that they had, that that's all the resources they had for this show, Crunchyroll being as successful as it is. And then on top of that, let's go back to Steven Universe again as an example. They were still able to give us interesting environments and designs that immediately hooked you at a glance, and make the best of that animation in a way that the show felt unique. This show can't quite pull that off. And while I did hear that the animation was better later on when like the climaxy stuff for this season started to happen, and I did go and watch some of that, just scrummed through the video a little bit to find examples of that, and it's true, the animation is better for the quote-unquote Sakuga stuff. It's still not super impressive to me, and I understand fully why anime fans couldn't get behind this show. It doesn't feel like anime. It feels like a show that's inspired by anime, like Steven Universe. But Steven Universe is not anime. And so, end of the day, and I'm not going to dwell too much on this show, I am probably going to watch the rest of this season. I want to be clear about that. Before I say the rest of the stuff that I'm about to say here, I am probably going to watch the rest of this season. I liked it that much. And if you are someone who likes the concepts of RWBY and Harry Potter and Steven Universe, who likes to see bright, colorful characters with some pretty witty dialogue, at least sometimes, and some representation here or there. Like, for example, the couple that the girls end up staying with in the city where the school is located are a lesbian couple, and they're really cute together. They're really good. And they even have some dialogue that feels a little exposition-y, but actually got me interested in this world for the first time ever. Like, for example, the fact that one of them's an elf, but they're like, I don't know if married's the right word. I didn't catch if they actually used the word married, but they're like joined together. Their unique kinds of magic can kind of overlap now because they're together in that way. That was genuinely cool. So if you're into that stuff, if you liked Steven Universe, if you like the concept of Harry Potter, I know we're not allowed to say we like Harry Potter anymore, but like, it's still a perfectly fine story. Let's not kid ourselves. Just, probably don't buy any new Harry Potter stuff. If you're into any of that, I'd recommend giving this show a shot. Just don't expect it to feel like an anime. And if you are looking for an anime that has kind of that same premise of a magic school, Little Witch Academia is right there, guys. Go watch that instead and stop whining about this perfectly fine but not really great show. I just feel like so many people have gotten on board with digging at this show because it was fashionable for a while to do so. And I guess there was some production stuff. I didn't really follow it, but I guess there was some production stuff that got some people really miffed about this too. But I'm not going to hold that against just the show itself, right? But at the same time, I say check it out if those things are true. But again, I only really think the show's fine. I don't think it's great. I'm not even necessarily sure that I think it's good yet. I just think it has potential. And even if it wastes some of that potential, it can still be an enjoyable experience. To a point. But like, I'm only 16 minutes into the recording of this. The video is going to be shorter because I'm going to cut out bad takes. Right? Which I'm sure surprises you because you're like, the takes in this video are the good ones? Yeah, they are, unfortunately. But I'm only 16 minutes into this recording, and I don't have anything else to say about it. Granted, I only watched 2 episodes and some clips, but still. I guess use your own discretion, but keep in mind, at least in the position of this one humble reviewer, this show is not as bad as some other reviewers have been making it out to be. I just hope that as I continue to watch this season, it eventually reaches a point where it finds some creative niche that it can use to really stand out, or else I might fall out of watching it too. I'm not sure yet. We'll have to see. I might do a follow-up on this too if it gets a second season. I'm not sure yet. All of that said though, guys, this has been my 2 cents on High Guardian Spice. What do you guys think of the show if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below. You can also check out links to my various social medias as well as the many ways you can help out the channel. Those will be in the video description, but either way, this has been AJ22 and I will talk to you guys later.